Nigeria's COVID-19 death toll reaches 200 as NCDC confirms 284 new cases. Lagos State Governor intervenes as doctors, health workers down tools over alleged harassment and intimidation by curfew enforcement teams. In international news, Cyclone Amphan hits India, Bangladesh, kills 22. And in sport, rugby coaches say Premiership players need 2 months to prepare for a comeback. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. One person has been confirmed dead and some seriously injured when a fully loaded tanker rammed into an interstate passenger bus on a Todola bridge in Lagos near the Ogun State border. Eyewitnesses say the tanker driver said he had a brake failure. 6 critically injured persons have been taken to the hospital. Nigeria's tally of confirmed COVID-19 cases is now closer to 7,000 after the Nigeria Center for Disease Control announced new 284 cases in 13 states on Wednesday. NCDC also reported 200 deaths so far. Lagos continues to carry the brunt of the tally as 199 of the new cases are credited to the state. 12 other states recorded cases in double digits. 1,840 COVID-19 patients have been discharged so far. Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has apologized to doctors and frontline health workers for the alleged harassment meted out to some of their members by COVID-19 curfew enforcement teams. The Lagos chapter of the Nigeria Medical Association had accused police officers in Lagos of blocking their members from getting to work. They are also accused of barring ambulances from conveying patients in emergency cases and even impounding the ambulances. The doctors say this has become a recurrent issue. ANN earlier reported NMA Lagos chairman Dr. Saliu Oseni had asked NMA members to stay home because of the unsafe atmosphere for them to continue providing healthcare services under what he called the present confused arrangements. Lagos State Commissioner for Information and Strategy Benga Omotosho says the issue has been resolved. Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Chikwe Ihekwazu, says COVID-19 is an infectious disease which may not necessarily weaken infected persons the way other diseases do. He said that is why some COVID-19 asymptomatic patients could be dancing and playing in isolation centers. Ihekwazu says infected persons are sent to isolation centers not just because they are ill, but to stop further transmission of the virus. The Director General says isolation centers in China and other advanced countries have gym centers in place so asymptomatic patients could keep their minds and body active. The NCDC boss says because of the complexity of Nigeria's population, the federal government cannot allow asymptomatic patients to self-isolate. He says it would only portend grave danger for the entire nation. Justice Ijoma Ojukwu of the Abuja Federal High Court has again declined to stop the House of Representatives from further deliberating on the controversial infectious disease bill. Senator Dino Melaye challenged the bill in court on the grounds that it could breach fundamental human rights if it becomes law. He also filed a motion exported last Wednesday seeking an interim order that would direct parties to the suit to maintain status quo pending the hearing and determination of the fundamental rights suit. The respondent or Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, Clerk of the National Assembly, Clerk of the House of Representatives, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, and the Inspector General of Police. Sultan of Sokoto Said Abubakar has asked Muslims all over the country to observe the Eid al-Fitr prayers in their houses, but some northern governors say no. Sultan Said Abubakar, who is the President General of the Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, has given a directive that Muslims should observe the prayers at home as part of their observance of the COVID-19 protocols and to prevent the spread of the virus. But some governors have eased lockdown restrictions to accommodate congregational prayers. Kano, Bauchi, Yobe, Jigawa, Gombe, Borno, and Zamfara state governors have all opened mosques to allow Friday's Jumat prayers. Sultan Abubakar says, as crucial as these times are, the Eid al-Fitr prayers must be observed according to the laid down restriction rules. Eid al-Fitr signifies the end of the one-month Ramadan fast. The prayers are likely to hold on Saturday or Sunday, depending on when the Shahar month is cited. Coming up, African stories. COVID-19 delays Ghana's implementation of African Free Trade Deal. And later, international news. Cyclone Amphan hits India, Bangladesh, kills 22.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Ghana's implementation of the African Free Trade Deal has been postponed, courtesy of COVID-19. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa says the African Trade Deal Agreement, once implemented, would form the world's largest trading bloc since the formation of the World Trade Organization. Nabil Ahmed Rufai has the story.
A landmark free trade agreement was meant to be up and running by July, but following the outbreak of the coronavirus, officials could not move in to the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area in Ghana's capital Accra. The launch has now been postponed.
If we don't pay particular attention going forward to the impact of the potentially disruptive impact of health issues on trade, we will not be doing justice to ourselves. And so that is a matter that we have agreed with the CDC in the implementation of the agreement to look at how we can mitigate the risk caused by pandemics on trade.
The African Continental Free Trade Area is expected to open the market for 1.3 billion people and boost intra-African trade. With border closures and the restrictions of movement of people caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, trade among African countries has been badly hit. But some analysts say the free trade agreement could still be implemented amidst the pandemic with focus on essential goods, including drugs and personal protective equipment.
We have agreed to have a free trade area. It can continue. The only phases and areas that need to be suspended for the time being, those are maybe the ones that they have to recommend. And let's say free movement of people, which have been affected now. You can't be moving from one country to another. But goods and services, now cargoes are being done. So a political decision can be made by the health system. Okay, let's trading still commence maybe in September or October, but for these areas.
While member countries have taxes waived on 90% of goods, they have yet to submit a list for the 10% of goods that will attract taxes, something analysts want done before the Secretariat sets a new launch date.
With the deferment of the commencement of the trading, it gives governments across Africa enough time to work with their private sectors, trade union organizations, to identify what constitute 10% exclusion list, so that once trading starts next year, there wouldn't be anything back and forth
Analysts suggest that these negotiations with member countries be done virtually through video conferencing. The Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area has yet to disclose when it will launch the agreement, but some experts are predicting next year. Meanwhile, with the implementation challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic, analysts say it's become critical to allow free trade of essential goods to reduce the impact of the health crisis on the continent.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo was making headway in its fight against the Ebola epidemic when the new coronavirus hit the country. As a plan to declare itself Ebola-free in March, 2 new cases fled and those plans were shelved. Now the country says it is optimistic about handling several epidemics simultaneously. Correspondent Chris Okamringa has the details.
The DRC has been struggling to end multiple epidemics over the past 2 years. More than 8,000 people have died of Ebola and measles since 2018. The outbreak of COVID-19 in March this year further strained the country's already overstretched healthcare system. But the government believes it can control the epidemics with the expertise it has gained.
The fight against epidemics in our country is being dealt with by scientific methods. We've gained a lot of experience in handling infectious diseases over the years. We will defeat these diseases with the community's involvement.
The World Health Organization says low-income countries experiencing conflict like the DRC are the most challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic. This was revealed at the 73rd World Health Assembly in Geneva. But donors have come to the country's rescue by funding emergency programs to limit the spread of diseases.
We are now carrying out campaigns to sensitize the population about the prevention of measles. We have urged parents to take their children for vaccination because there's no other treatment.
While cases of COVID-19 have been rising, the country has made progress in tackling the Ebola outbreak. The last Ebola patient was discharged from a health facility in eastern DRC last Friday. The DRC has been relying heavily on international agencies for funding to handle the health emergencies in the country. But there's a shortage of medical supplies and protective equipment for health workers, which has put the lives of many of them at risk and complicated the response effort.
Egypt's unemployment rate is soaring amid COVID-19. The coronavirus pandemic is evolving from a healthcare crisis into a financial quagmire in the country, shocking businesses, upending industries and placing the livelihoods of hundreds of millions at risk around the world and in Egypt. Correspondent Adil El Marouki tells us how bad.
Until mid-March, Egypt's unemployment rates had been steadily dropping. But from March 17, the COVID-19 pandemic began casting its shadows over the North African nation's economy. In just a few weeks, unemployment spiked to 9.2% from 7.7%.
Before the pandemic, Egypt was moving well in dropping unemployment rates. The latest report showed it went down to 7.7% from 8.1% quarter to quarter. But now, the pandemic is slowing down the economy and production power. Some industries have also been completely frozen.
Egypt has shut education facilities, theaters, and cafes. Aviation and tourism are frozen. In-house dining has been banned in all restaurants. Their repercussions have extended to all other industries.
Compared to the global projections issued by international financial institutions, Egypt is well absorbing the pandemic shock. Governmental and non-governmental and private bodies are all collaborating to issue financial support to irregular labor. The central bank is restructuring their debt. The government has been on track to take preemptive measures to diminish the economic impact of the pandemic.
Government has banned layoffs in sectors like tourism and aviation. In return, it's pouring some $6.2 billion to support the most vulnerable individuals and industries. Almost all fields in Egypt have reported layoffs or salary cuts of up to 50% or both. Egypt's workforce has some 29 million citizens. Analysts are expecting up to 20% of unemployment rates if the pandemic's impact stretched to the end of the year. It could get worse when Egyptian expatriates lose their job and return home.
When we return, international news, Cyclone Amphan hits India, Bangladesh kills 22. And later, sport. Rugby coaches say Premiership players need 2 months to properly prepare for a comeback.
You are watching AM.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. India and Bangladesh have been hit by a powerful cyclone on Thursday. At least 22 persons have been killed. The cyclone has also caused severe damage across the area. Roofs were blown off buildings. Churning waves swallowed embankments and bridges. Entire villages were left without access to fresh water, electricity and communications. The cyclone had weakened after hitting the shore on Wednesday evening. Officials expressing fear that relief and repair work may be made more difficult by the coronavirus pandemic that has stretched the healthcare system. Cyclone Amphan is like a Category 3 hurricane. It packed sustained winds of up to 170 kilometers per hour. The cyclone hit the shore with maximum gusts of 190 kilometers per hour. By the time it reached Bangladesh, it had lost power. But the densely populated regions of South Bengal experienced storm surges that pushed seawater 25 kilometers inland and flooded cities, including Kolkata. Weather forecasters say many parts of the state will experience heavy rainfall for the next 1 week. India's meteorological office says the cyclone will disrupt local wind circulation and would also trigger heat waves in some parts of the country. The World Health Organization, WHO, has announced the largest coronavirus new cases ever recorded in one day. WHO says the 106,000 cases it's confirmed on Wednesday was the highest number ever recorded in one day since COVID-19 broke out in December in Wuhan, China. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus has expressed great concern for low and middle income nations that are being hit by this pandemic. Nearly 5 million persons have been infected globally and more than 325,000 have died around the world. A spate of lockdowns and other anti-pandemic measures have been taken by most of the countries, and these have greatly decimated their economies. Portugal appears to be on its way back from the economic pain imposed by COVID-19. It has begun implementing its phased reopening as the country is commended for the way it has handled the pandemic. It began lockdowns early and has recorded fewer than 700 cases and 2 deaths. Correspondent Mia Alberti has the details.
For the first time in 2 months, the most famous pastry shop in Lisbon finally reopens.
It was a difficult decision to close for the first time in 43 years. We are excited to reopen and do what we do best.
I came here to help this iconic house and also to give this sweet gift to family and friends. I'm sure they already miss these pastries a lot.
Restaurants, hairdressers, museums and most shops are also reopening. A sweet reward as Portugal maintains one of the lowest number of confirmed coronavirus cases per capita in Europe. Dr. Filipe Frões from the COVID-19 task force says Portugal had time to prepare, with the virus arriving later than in Spain and Italy.
We had precious days to implement a strategy that allowed us to prepare our hospital response. We also introduced the state of emergency and confinement measures earlier than these countries, so those measures had more impact.
Portugal quickly closed schools, borders, and closely monitored patients placed in home isolation. The number of ICU beds was increased by 35%. However, patient demand never reached full capacity. Most citizens also stayed at home despite the absence of a mandatory lockdown. The government says other restrictions might be lifted soon, like resuming religious services or football games, if the situation continues to improve. The government warns, however, that full safety from the virus won't be possible until there's a vaccine. Until then, social distancing and masks are part of the new normal. The Prime Minister has said he will have no problem in reintroducing the state of emergency if cases begin to rise again. So the situation will be reassessed every 15 days. And that's to give authorities some time to keep the pandemic under control and avoiding the economy into falling into yet another financial crisis.
Up next, sports. Rugby coaches say Premiership players need 2 months to properly prepare for a comeback. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. The International Cycling Governing Body has banned a 31-year-old Colombia cyclist, Jolinson Pantano Gomez, for 4 years for doping. Pantano was the stage 15 winner in the 2016 Tour de France while he was pedaling for the Swiss-based EAM cycling team. Leicester Tigers head coach Jordan Murphy says Premiership players will need 2 months to properly prepare for a full return to action. Premiership rugby hope to restart the season in July, but there must first be a go-ahead from the rugby union authorities before training can resume. Murphy says union's physicality means players must ramp up training. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.